All right, let's find out what is making a buzz online. Sanav Shantier is here with today's Media Watch. Good to see you, Sanav. And we're going to start with Theresa May's latest trip to Brussels. She's been meeting with Jean-Claude Juncker throughout the day. Both of them saying things have been going quite well as they try and iron out those final differences. What kind of reactions have you been seeing online?
Well, Laura, the most fiery reactions that I've been coming across online have been those to Amber Rudd, who's, of course, the Work and Pensions Secretary. She was a former campaigner for Remain. She actually admitted earlier that a Brexit referendum is quite possibly still on the table. That's if Parliament rejects Theresa May's deal. And it doesn't really come as a surprise that her controversial comment was rather unsurprisingly seized upon by supporters of a referendum, a second one. And this is one of the examples. We had the former cabinet minister, Justine Greening, give an interview to the UK's Channel 4 News there saying, you know, the public now have the right to choose. She told Channel 4 News that Parliament can't ignore the fact that there is gridlock here. Now, we also had another tweet that I'm just going to bring to your attention from Keir Starmer, who is the Labour shadow Brexit secretary, saying, you know, in fact, Amber Rudd is right. Parliament will stop a no deal because that's going to cause a great deal of mayhem.
So did she specifically say there should be a second referendum, or did she
just
just
say...
say...
Well, this is the thing. She's gone back on that now, saying this is not what I meant. There most likely won't be. So there are a lot of questions being asked, but that didn't stop the reactions pouring out on Twitter.
Because she was brought in to support Theresa May, wasn't
and
she?
She's going against what the Prime Minister's essentially been saying. We also had a tweet, and of course this is a very polarising subject, as you know. We had a tweet from an English lawyer and writer. His name is David Alan Green, and he had a series of tweets here saying that there are in fact no alternatives to the plausible paths that we have at the moment, one of which is, of course, something that we've been talking about, the no-deal Brexit, and the other one, the current proposal on the table from Theresa May. He says, look, the Article 50 period is unlikely to be extended. The government and opposition are both against a second referendum, and last but not least, the EU is rather content with the current proposal on the table, so they won't easily budge. Now, we've been talking about how polarising this is, but we had one tweet from Owen Jones, who I'm sure you're familiar with him, who has a massive following, he's a political commentator in the UK, saying that actually we should be paying tribute to Theresa May because she's united people over Brexit. She's united people against her worst, this is what he calls it, of all worlds Brexit deal. Now, I want to end this segment with the Sun newspaper, as always, jumping on this. And of course, they're a tabloid newspaper. For those that aren't familiar with it, they carry a very anti-EU rhetoric. This is the article. And this is their version of an explainer of what would happen if there is a no-deal Brexit. They call it no-deal dramas. And it looks at all the possible scenarios there. It's not sort of that body of a naked woman. We'll go a little bit further down if we can.
Oh,
I saw your reaction there. Another one. We'll just ignore that. Well, look at me for now. It brings to the fourth everything from the UK being treated as a third country by the EU if there's no deal, to mayhem on ports, to residency rights for EU nationals in the UK disappearing overnight. So a rather fear-mongering piece beyond the naked images that we have on the screen,
maybe that was to ease people's fears a little bit. Well, you might think that they might have brought those up a little bit earlier in the game, but there we go. Anyway, all right, let's talk about something else. Interpol. The Russians were rather hopeful that their man was going to be running the organisation. Not to be. It's a South Korean instead.
Well, there's been a lot of reaction, and it's collective cheer. That's what we're hearing. Now, one of the first to take to Twitter was Bill Browder. Now, he is a very well-known, very prominent, outspoken critic of the Kremlin. And he was at some point actually one of the biggest foreign investors in Russia. He's tweeted a total humiliation for Putin. He must be stomping around the Kremlin right now, furious. And of course, again, this doesn't come as a surprise. The reaction in Ukraine was rather jubilant. You can't read that, but I can, thanks to Google Translate. That is an image of the Ukrainian interior minister with, of course, the winning South Korean candidate saying Russia's candidacy was rejected. The battle is won. Thank you all. Glory to Ukraine. Of course, we know that Kiev and Moscow have been at a deadlock since the annexation of Crimea some 4 years ago. Now, looking at a more sort of humanitarian angle. We've had tweets from a number of journalists. One of them is Morgan Ford, who says, win for Russian dissidents and the world more broadly. Of course, the link to that is that many were concerned about the fact that the Russian candidate, Alexander Prokopchuk, was actually systematically targeting many dissidents and critics when he was at the helm of the Russian office of Interpol. So that's coming up here, echoed by TV host Ross Kaminsky in the US saying, good job not electing the Putin pawn, dodged a bullet. Actually, some people probably literally dodged a bullet from a Putin hitman. And I want to end on a slightly lighter note. You may be familiar with this. Have I got news for you?
Oh, absolutely. Classic.
It's a British comedy quiz show that grills celebrities about the sort of news of the day, news of the week. And their account tweeted this sort of the following satirical tweet, an image of Putin on the phone saying, as Russian candidate loses Interpol presidential election, one man furiously calls his IT department.
Well, we all know that feeling, don't we? All right, Sanam, thank you very much indeed. Sanam Chantier there.